In 1917, a young Irish priest named Father Edward J. Flanagan had been working with homeless men in Omaha, Nebraska, and he became discouraged at the seemingly never-ending stream of new youth growing to adulthood stuck in desperate situations. And he decided that the solution was to start working with disadvantaged children and try to steer them toward better lives. So in December of that year, he borrowed $90 to begin renting a boarding house, giving it the name Father Flanagan's Home for Boys. Regardless of race or religion, all boys were welcome, and within months, 100 boys were living at the home. To expand his efforts in 1921, Father Flanagan purchased a farm on the outskirts of Omaha and moved his boys' home there. The home came to be known as the Village of Boys Town, and by the 1930s, the operation included a school, dormitories, administration buildings, and other facilities to accommodate the hundreds of boys who lived in the small village. The boys started their own government, complete with a mayor, a council, and commissioners. In 1936, the community was officially recognized as a legally constituted village in the state of Nebraska. News of the Boys Town success gained international acclaim with the Academy Award-winning movie in 1938 entitled Boys Town. A few years later, after World War II, President Harry Truman encouraged Father Flanagan to travel around the world visiting war orphans and giving counsel to government leaders on how to care for their displaced children. Father Flanagan died in 1948, but the work carried on. Two significant changes took place under the leadership of Monsignor Robert P. Hupp in the 1970s. First, Boys Town shifted from dormitories to having the youth live in private homes in a foster care type setting. This change allowed Boys Town to start providing services to young women as well. The second change was a massive expansion. They created the Boys Town National Research Hospital, a nationally recognized treatment center for children with hearing and speech disorders. Boys Town has continued to expand, now with 12 branches across the United States. Since its inception, Father Flanagan's simple dream to make the world a better place for children has touched the lives of millions of people. Great work has been accomplished for countless children. Unfortunately, there are many children from Boys Town who never experienced the positive aspects of Father Flanagan's dream. Instead, what Boys Town gave to them was a nightmare. A living hell on earth brim with episodes of child sex slavery, rape, and exploitation on a scale that is almost unfathomable. As we have already discussed in this series, in Omaha, Nebraska, a rising star in the Republican Party, Lawrence King Jr., the head of the Franklin Federal Credit Union, was operating a pedophile network that supplied child slaves to the elite in Washington, D.C. Most of his victims were trafficked out of Boys Town. Former Nebraska State Senator John DeCamp, an attorney who investigated the pedophile ring for years, has written extensively on the Boys Town connection. In 1993, DeCamp was working on a new book on the subject of Boys Town. The British Broadcasting Company, BBC, got a copy of an early edition of the book. They sent an investigative team with a nearly unlimited budget to the United States to research DeCamp's claims. They spent 9 months fact-checking stories and interviewing parties associated with the scandal. The BBC completed their investigation, convinced that DeCamp was correct. They produced an hour-long documentary called Conspiracy of Silence. The documentary received widespread advanced promotion, and its upcoming air date was published in all the TV guides, noting that it would be shown on the Discovery Channel. The BBC paid $500,000 to buy the airtime to show the documentary on May 3, 1994. The documentary was set to expose a network of religious leaders and Washington politicians who flew children to Washington, D.C. for sex orgies. It also documented that children were being auctioned off as slaves to foreigners in Las Vegas, Nevada and Toronto, Canada, while being forced to stand in their underwear with identification numbers written on cardboard signs hung from their necks. But just before the air date, a group of unnamed U.S. congressmen threatened to crack down on the TV cable industry with restrictive legislation if the documentary was shown to the public. Immediately after this threat, a secret party purchased the rights to the documentary, and they also had all known copies of the documentary destroyed. Fortunately, someone who had access to an incomplete version of the documentary leaked the video, sending a copy of it anonymously to Senator DeCamp. DeCamp made it available to retired FBI agent Ted Gunderson, and today we have that leaked version of the banned documentary. The video quality is not of high standard, but the material in the documentary is very important. Here is a short excerpt featuring Senator John DeCamp as he explains the Boys Town connection.
John DeCamp is among the most highly decorated Vietnam veterans. A former Republican state senator in Lincoln, Nebraska, he is now a lawyer fighting the legacy of Lawrence King's abuse of power.
It's a web of intrigue that starts at our Holy of Holies, Boys Town, Nebraska, one of the most respected institutions in the United States, and spreads out like a spider web to Washington, D.C., right up to the steps of the nation's capital, the steps of the White House, involves some of the most respected and powerful and richest businessmen in this United States of America. And the centerpiece of the entire web is the use of children for sex and drug dealing and drug couriers, the compromising of politicians, the compromising of businessmen, but worst of all, the corruption of key institutions of government that have the duty and responsibility to make sure these things never happen.
There is a well-known idiom that says, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater." What it means is that we should avoid the error of getting rid of something good in the process of trying to eliminate something bad. We must not reject that which is essential in order to get rid of the non-essential. Like Boys Town, which has done enormous good throughout its history, there are other agencies, organizations, and institutions which do accomplish good things for needy children. However, evil and conspiring men have infiltrated many of these institutions and have corrupted them from within. But rather than declare an organization such as Boys Town or even the Catholic Church itself as wholly corrupted, we must not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Instead of condemning Boys Town as a whole, we must root out the problem so that the organization can continue to do good. At the sign of cancer in the body, we don't immediately euthanize the patient. We try to remove the cancer to keep it from spreading to the rest of the body. This is John DeCamp's attitude toward Boys Town.
Boys Town, for me, was the first thing I ever heard of when you think of institutions that you respect. Believe it or not, I was there for a while when I was a young boy. When an institution like that gets contaminated, then you better, if you got any decency at all, do something about it or at least get it cleared up.
John DeCamp lays the blame for the contamination of Boys Town of the one-time leader of the National Black Republican Council, Larry King.
Larry King was the fastest rising black star in the entire Republican Party of all of the 1980s. And he was also one of the most evil individuals in this country in terms of being a dealer of children, in terms of being a thief, 40 million that they documented he stole, and in terms of using and compromising and corrupting one after another politicians.
Among the people who Senator DeCamp has represented in court was a young man named Paul Bonacci. This series will contain in-depth episodes on the story of Bonacci, but for the purposes of this video, we will summarize the story of Bonacci briefly. Starting around 8 years old, Bonacci was involved in extensive pedophile activity with powerful men. At 12 years old, Benassi was having sex frequently with a millionaire named Alan Baer, a close associate of Lawrence King. Some of these sexual encounters took place at Baer's apartment at the Twin Towers, also the location of one of King's penthouses that he used to use to host pedophile parties. Benassi was used as a child sex slave by the pedophile leaders. He was sent on at least 200 to 300 trips to participate in sex parties for elites. Of the many trips to California, young Paul Benassi was kept in a cage at the Bohemian Grove. He watched helplessly as a fellow boy slave was sodomized by a man and then shot in the head, while the snuff film was recorded by none other than Hunter S. Thompson. Benassi was forced to sodomize the corpse of the boy afterward to avoid being killed himself. He was also sent on numerous trips to parties in Washington, D.C., and was among the group of homosexual callboys that was spoken of in a shocking Washington Times expose. To prove that he had in fact been in the White House, Benassi drew intricate diagrams of interior rooms in the White House that the public does not have access to for security reasons. The Secret Service confirmed that his diagrams were accurate. Among the duties assigned to Benassi by Alan Baer was the practice of scavenger hunts. Benassi would go to the Boys Town village and recruit young boys into the pedophile operation by enticing them to the parties being thrown by King.
But King used Boys Town not just as a source of young boys for his business. He prostituted them at sex and drug orgies. Paul Benassi was a victim of King's abuse. He was also sent by King to lure Boys Town youngsters off campus.
We used to just drive around and go up toward the home. That's when we used to do some of the scavenger hunts with picking up some of the kids. You know, just kind of win their confidence, become friends with them for a while. Start inviting them to the parties. The kids were 10 years old or older.
In 1986, King's plundering of Boys Town was reported by staff to its chief executive, Father Val Peter. Subsequent testimony proves that he carried out his own investigation, but that King's victims refused to talk to him.
It has long been the practice of the Catholic Church, its bishops and priests, to try to preserve the name and reputation of the Church and to maintain the faith of its adherents by dealing with allegations of clergy pedophilia internally rather than going to the police. As has been well documented, the practice of simply moving pedophile priests around to other parishes only perpetuated the problem. Senator DeCamp has alleged that the Catholic Archdiocese of Omaha, of which Boys Town is a part, was complicit in the abuse of children from Boys Town because the bishop had received numerous reports of pedophile operations but did not go to the police. In fact, one of the priests who went on record stating that he had personally told the bishop of sex abuse of boys in the town was Monsignor Robert P. Hupp, the man in charge of Boys Town during the height of the scandal. Based on the evidence, DeCamp believed that Boys Town was essentially being used as a farm from which pedophile bosses like King and Baer were able to obtain children to provide for use in the national pedophile network. DeCamp was so concerned about the lack of effort to combat the problem by the local archdiocese that he traveled to Rome to meet with Cardinal Ratzinger, the man who later became Pope Benedict and who ended up resigning in the midst of perpetual sex abuse revelations. DeCamp said that he could not persuade Ratzinger to take any substantive action on the situation in Omaha, partly due to the inaction and cover-up by certain members of the Catholic hierarchy. The pedophile trafficking network was able to continue unhindered.
And so Larry King remained free to feed his pedophilic parties with child victims. But in 1988, a routine review brought King's involvement with Boys Town youth to the attention of Nebraska's State Foster Care Review Board.
In the information presented to the Foster Care Review Board, either via the telephone reports, the personal reports, or the reports we reviewed, Larry King's name was consistently present as someone that the youth were making allegations against. I would say we handed over at least a foot-high amount of material to authorities. And nothing happened.
There is much more to the story of Boys Town, which is covered in the Conspiracy of Silence documentary. If you would like to view the full version, it will be made available at youtube.com/prepare333. In our next episode, we will travel from Omaha, Nebraska to the Vatican in Rome, Italy, headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church, and we will examine more deeply the role of some of the bureaucrats in the hierarchy of the Church who have helped to perpetuate the satanic pedophile network. We will examine connections between pedophile priests, the Vatican Bank, the Masonic P2 secret society, and the Italian Mafia. Join us next time as we continue our mission to bring these acts of evil criminals out of darkness and into the light. For the End Times News Report, I'm Jake Morphonios.